So C.J. Stroud's an excellent leader for the Buckeyes as we welcome in another excellent leader, Tony Gerdeman from BuckeyeHuddle.com. Gerd, thank you for joining us tonight.
Thank you for having me, and thank you for that apt introduction.
You know, last week you pointed out that C.J. Stroud threw 6 touchdowns in the first half against Michigan State. This year against Michigan State, he threw 6 touchdowns again, but not all in the first half. So he's slipping? Is that what we're taking out of this?
Maybe he's just spreading the love into the second half to be a more well-rounded player. It's pretty amazing what he's been able to do against Michigan State over the last 2 years, and I guess this will be the last time we probably see him against Michigan State, I would say.
What is the limit? The sky's the limit for C.J. Stroud? Well, I mean, it's almost as if we're getting used to these remarkable statistics where, you know, he's got like, I think, 24 touchdown passes through half a season. You don't even blink at that anymore. That's an amazing statistic that is just kind of getting blown away because he's performing at such a high level week in and week out.
Yeah, this was something I asked Ryan Day a couple of weeks ago. I said, basically, I started it by saying, I think it's kind of silly to critique C.J. Stroud because he's basically being judged off of, you're not perfect. Like, you have to be better than you were last year or else you're regressing. And it's almost impossible to be better than he was last year. And so when he's merely as good as he is last year or maybe slightly better, it's like, well, did people expect more? And it's totally not fair for people to expect more. But this is also, he's doing this without Jackson Smith and Jigba, doing this without knowing which running back is going to be healthy week to week. And there's never been just a set thing except for like the first game of the season. And let's just assume that's an outlier. Like the one time you have everybody healthy for a first quarter, things don't go well. But what is the ceiling? What are the possibilities? I mean, it will be interesting to see what happens when they start facing legitimate defenses, but I don't know how much it will matter. Will they average 50 points a game? Maybe not. Will they average 42? Is anybody going to hold them to 31? I don't know that, without some 3 turnovers or so, it's going to be hard to hold this team to like 31 points. And as we know, if Ryan Day gets above 30, the Buckeyes are winning. And it seems, even to say 31 points for this Ohio State offense seems low.
And they're closing in on a national record for consecutive game scoring. I think 21 or more points. I think they're like 3 away from Oklahoma's record. As this Ohio State team has a good time to take the week off. We certainly have talked about the health issues overall. Ryan Day on Tuesday saying he thinks everybody's going to be good to go for the Iowa game, except those guys are going to be long-term injuries. And interesting thing that he kind of teased on Tuesday as well is they're perhaps working on some packages with both Mayan Williams and Travion Henderson in the backfield at the same time.
Yeah, and we talk about this seemingly every year when there are 2 running backs. I remember talking about it about when J.K. Dobbins and Mike Weber were together. But this seems like one of those things. Ryan Day said on Tuesday, they like to add something, more than one thing to the offense every single week for an opponent. And this would seemingly be something that would be interesting to see. It's a thing where the offense or the defense will then have to deal with both of them. There's some confusion about who's doing what and what's going on and why are they both out there and who do you trigger on and what does this all mean? So that gets the defense thinking as well. And it could just all be show. It could all be a decoy. Like, yeah, look they're so focused on the 2 running backs. They've lost contain or they've forgotten about somebody else. So there's so many different things that they can do. Ryan Day is always worried about not wanting to do too much. But like I said, they want to add more and more and more to this offense, including getting Jackson Smith and Jigba back and, the health aspect. But like this offense, it's already good enough, but it's not good enough for Ryan Day and his offensive staff and for the Buckeyes themselves who want to continue getting better. And as Justin Fry said, this offensive line comes into the meeting room every Monday wanting to do more, wanting to know something else, wanting to learn something else.
Defensively, Jim Knowles also talked about how he has installed things in the Buckeye defense that we haven't seen in games and that maybe this is a week where they're going to work on some things. But he was very adamant that he doesn't want to install something in 1 week and put it in that same week. He wants to work on it for a few weeks in practice before we see it in a game.
Yeah, think of it as putting a little seed in the ground and he's watering it for a couple weeks before it sprouts and you finally see it. And, that makes complete sense. He wants his guys to be comfortable with it. This is a fast defense, and it's fast because the players know what they're doing and they're comfortable doing what they're doing. and there's trust there. So the more they're able to prepare for something and work on something in practice, the more second nature becomes, the more themselves they trust in themselves, they trust in their teammates, and it allows them to keep that speed. And so when you've worked on something for say 3 weeks and it's like, okay, this is the week that we're breaking this out. All of this time we've been spending working on this one thing, we're going to do it this week. That gets them even more excited to do it, gets them probably even faster on the field. So it's an interesting practice in practice. And, what it is each week, we don't know, because it all looks like chaos at times. But I'm sure when the offensive coordinator or the quarterback mainly sees it, it will be something that they didn't see in practice. And so then you have to adjust. And that's what they want from these quarterbacks, these opposing quarterbacks. If they just have to think a split second longer, they've won.
Let's talk a little about that Ohio State defensive line. Zach Harrison, we've seen him move inside a little bit. We've seen the return of the Rushman package. And Mike Hall Jr. against Michigan State only played 7 or 8 snaps, would have had 2.5 sacks. I think it would have had 3.5 if it wasn't for a penalty that negated one of them. But there was a very good reason why Michael Hall Jr. was limited against Michigan State.
Yeah, coming back from an injury. So they brought him along slowly, brought him along in a way that would keep him engaged, but also give him kind of a lighter load and didn't want to ask too much of him. So it's like, what does he excel at? He excels at rushing the passer. Okay, we'll just throw you in on passing downs. They're not throwing him out there on a goal line package. They just wanted to ease him back into things and also like keep him, going. It's like when you see players on the sideline riding the stationary bike just to keep their muscles loose. They're just keeping them loose. And as Larry Johnson said, if somebody had gone down, he could have played 40 snaps if they needed, but obviously they didn't want him to do that. They've been these last couple of weeks, it seems like they've been keeping it easy for a lot of guys in terms of not wanting them to overdo it as they head into this bye week so that they can all get as healthy as they've been all season long. And, it's pretty, I don't know the efficiency numbers on Mike Hall's sack rate, but it's hard to imagine somebody having anything better than his, I don't know, almost 50% sack rate this past weekend.
One area of concern has been the cornerback play. A lot of talk about how they can do better on 50-50 balls. What do you think the key is for those cornerbacks going forward?
That's a good question because as Jim Knowles said, like they're there, but there are times where they've lost the ball or Cam Brown had his pass interference where he lost his receiver and tried catching up and it's an underthrown pass. And over the last decade or so, the underthrown pass has become the most effective pass in football. That's back shoulder. That's the underthrown to cause pass interferences that we're seeing. And so what I like their approach this week, they're just going to give them more and more and more of these 50-50 balls. They're going to work on it in practice so that they can get better at it and they can get more accustomed to it. Because you don't necessarily, you see it a few times in a game, maybe, and it only takes 1 or 2 to make you look bad, basically. I think Jim Knowles said you can stop a team all game long, but if they hit 2 50-50 balls on you, that might be 2 touchdowns. And so the fact that they're going to work hard at it without, I think Ryan Day or Jim Knowles saying, work hard at it without blowing them out, basically. Get them some work, get them better at it, get them more accustomed to it, get back to that kind of the second nature that I was talking about earlier.
With Ohio State not playing this Saturday, where should Buckeye fans be paying attention to Saturday afternoon, Saturday evening? Are there a couple of games that you really should be honing in on?
Yeah, I think the Penn State-Michigan game at noon will be one that Buckeye fans can watch and take a look at that Michigan defense. They have not faced an offense worth anything at this point, and Penn State's a decent offense and not a very good one, but we'll see what kind of damage they can do. And likewise, that Michigan offense, we'll see what they do against a more talented Penn State defense. And can Penn State really do anything there in Ann Arbor? I think that's going to be a fun one. There's some stuff going on in the Pac-12 that'll be interesting to watch. And of course, everybody's going to be watching the Alabama-Tennessee game at 3:30. I know I will as well. And seeing is Bryce Young healthy? I know Buckeye fans are always going to have one eye on Alabama to see where they are. But while you're watching Alabama, don't forget about Tennessee in that mix too, because if the Vols win, they might be jumping Ohio State here in some polls here pretty shortly.
All right, thank you very much, Tony Gerdeman. Ohio State with the week off. Buckeyes hoping to have a quiet weekend. Hasn't always been the case on off weekends in years past, but hopefully we get one this week. Thank you, Gerd.
Yep.